The noise in the auction yard had already faded when Claire realized the terrible mistake. She was walking home with a horse she never bid on. A skinny, restless animal with scars around the neck and eyes that tracked every movement like he'd seen too much. People laughed behind her back, whispering that she'd wasted her money again, that she'd inherited her father's land, but not his sense. But that night, inside the dim wooden barn, the horse did something no one expected, something that made Claire step backward, heart racing, as he nudged his worn saddle toward her, insisting she look inside. Before we get into what Claire found, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters, and tell me, where are you watching from? I love knowing how far these stories travel. The morning had started like many others in late summer Kansas, thick heat pressing down on the fields, the smell of dust rising from the dry ground, cicadas buzzing with a persistence that seemed almost irritated. Claire arrived at the Hutchinson livestock auction with a clear purpose and a tight budget. She needed a calm, reliable horse to help her manage the 40 acres her father left behind. The fences needed repair, hay needed to be hauled, and her old pickup wasn't always enough. The yard was crowded. Farmers in faded denim, teenagers taking photos of goats they'd never buy, men shouting bids, trailers closing, hooves hitting metal ramps. Claire wiped sweat from her forehead, tucking a loose strand of hair under her cap. She'd studied the catalogue the night before. Horse number 27, a chestnut mare known for being gentle and used to farm work, exactly what she needed. But confusion was common at Kansas auctions. Horses moved quickly, numbers were mismatched, and handlers often rushed to keep the event on schedule. When the bidding for 27 started, Claire lifted her hand calmly. She wasn't a risk-taker, not today. She made one offer, low but fair. Surprisingly, no one countered. "Sold! To the lady in the ball cap," the auctioneer announced. Claire nodded, relieved. For the first time in weeks, something felt like it was going right. But when she walked around the back of the pens to pick up her new mare, a handler approached leading a different horse. This one was tall but painfully thin, its ribs visible even under the dusty coat. Its dark eyes darted nervously, tracking every movement, and around the base of its neck were faint circular scars, like pressure marks from a rope kept too tight for too long. "This isn't 27, Claire said immediately. "It's the one on your ticket," the handler replied, holding out the lead rope. "You bought him, ma'am." "Him? I was supposed to get a mare." The handler shrugged, already tired of the conversation. The auction was loud, disorganized, and no one had the patience to untangle a mistake after payment had been processed. "You want him or not? 'Cause if not, he goes to the reject pen and you still don't get your refund." People nearby slowed their steps, watching. Claire hated attention, especially now with a dozen strangers waiting to see if she'd make a scene. "What's wrong with him?" she asked quietly. "Skittish, hard-mouthed, probably used rough." The handler leaned closer. "Truth is, nobody wanted him. You're the only bidder he's had today." The horse lifted its head at that exact moment, ears pricking forward as if it understood, like he didn't want to be dismissed again. His breathing was fast, nervous, but there was intelligence in the eyes, not fear alone, awareness. The whispers started. "She bought that one, poor thing. That horse is trouble. City girl doesn't know what she's doing." Claire swallowed hard. She wasn't a city girl. She'd grown up mending barbed wire with her dad and hauling hay every summer. But the last few years had been rough. Her father's illness, the hospital bills, the isolation of running the farm alone after he passed. She knew what people thought, that she wasn't strong enough to keep the place going. Maybe that's why she looked again at the thin, restless horse. Maybe she saw something familiar in the way he stood there, still trying, even when nobody believed in him. "I'll keep him," she said. The handler blinked, surprised. "You sure?" "He ain't easy." "I'm sure." Someone laughed behind her. Another shook his head. But Claire took the rope, touched the horse's neck gently, and felt him tense, then loosen, just slightly. The walk back to her truck was slow. The horse hesitated at every noise. The sound of metal gates clanging made him jump. Claire spoke softly, her voice steady even while her heart pounded. She didn't know his history, but she could tell he wasn't mean, just confused, mistreated, unsure of what humans wanted from him. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the gravel roads as she drove him home in a borrowed trailer. The farmland around her swayed gently with patches of prairie grass, golden and sharp under the fading light. Claire kept thinking about the scars on his neck, the way he watched everyone like he expected them to hurt him. When she finally backed the trailer into the old barn, the air inside was warm and earthy, filled with the scent of hay and dust. She led him into a stall padded with fresh straw, left the door open so he wouldn't feel trapped, and loosened the worn saddle he still wore. That was when the horse did something strange. Not supernatural, not impossible, just intentional. He nudged her shoulder, once, then again, harder. Claire stepped aside, confused. The horse reached back awkwardly, bumping the saddle with his nose, pushing it toward her. "Easy," she whispered. "Let me take it off." But he didn't want the saddle removed. He wanted her to look at it. More specifically, at the small stitched-shut pocket near the right flank of the saddle, a pocket she hadn't noticed before. When she touched it, the horse stilled completely. No movement, no nervous shifting. Just waiting. Claire hesitated. What could be inside an old saddle pocket? A note? Tools? Maybe nothing. Maybe she was imagining the urgency, but the horse looked at her the same way he had at the auction, eyes wide, alert, pleading without sound. Claire exhaled, reached for the small pocket, and slid her fingers under the stiff leather flap. Inside, her fingertips brushed something thin, something folded. Paper. Old paper. She pulled it out, her heart thudding in the quiet barn, and as she unfolded the creased sheet, the horse took a single step back, watching her with an intensity that made Claire feel like whatever she was about to read, it wasn't meant to stay hidden forever. The paper felt fragile in Claire's hands, the edges worn soft like it had been folded and unfolded many times before. The barn was quiet except for the distant hum of crickets and the slow, uneven breathing of the horse watching her. Dust floated in the warm air, drifting lazily through the shafts of evening light slipping between the boards. Kansas summers always stretch the days long, but right now, Claire felt time pressing in, heavy and still. She stepped back from the stall gate, giving the horse space while she shook the stiffness out of the paper. It wasn't a letter exactly, not in any form she recognized. It was a small sheet torn from a notebook, the kind used by farmers to track feed or equipment repairs. The handwriting was hurried, slanted, and deeply pressed into the page as if written during a moment of panic or urgency. She read the first line and felt her breath catch. "If you're reading this," the horse made it out. Claire looked up immediately, scanning the horse's face like he might confirm it. The animal wasn't pacing anymore. He wasn't trembling or avoiding her eyes. Instead, he stood still, ears angled toward her, waiting. She swallowed hard and read on. "His name is Hunter. He's not dangerous no matter what they say. Please don't send him back to Lawson's ranch. If you've seen how thin he is, you know why." A chill prickled Claire's skin despite the heat. Everyone in Reno County knew Lawson's ranch. Some admired it. Others avoided even mentioning it. The owner, Mitch Lawson, had a reputation for being a tough man with a sharper tongue, someone who ran his business with more force than care. Horses came in and out of that place, and rumors traveled with them. Rough training, long hours, tempers lost. Claire kept reading. "I tried to take Hunter before things got worse, but they caught me. I don't know what they'll do when they realize he's gone. If anyone finds this horse, please give him a chance. He's smarter than most and he remembers everything." A name was written at the bottom, smudged but readable. Daniel. Claire stared at it for a long moment. Daniel. Just a first name. No number, no address. Nothing to identify who he was or why he risked stealing. No rescuing a horse from a ranch known for bad handling. She folded the note again and slipped it into her pocket, her heart tight in her chest. Hunter snorted softly, pawing at the straw. Claire took a slow step toward him. His ears flicked back, then forward again, uncertain, but not afraid. "So that's your name," she whispered. "Hunter." He blinked at her, muscles twitching as if his body was still ready to flee at any sudden noise. Claire extended her hand, palm up. The horse hesitated, then lowered his head and pressed his muzzle lightly against her fingers. It wasn't affection exactly. It was trust being tested, cautious and new. Outside, the sky was fading to a dusty pink. Thunderheads gathered far off on the horizon, faint and blue-gray, promising a storm that might or might not drift north by morning. July in Kansas had a habit of playing with promises like that. Claire rubbed Hunter's neck gently, feeling the roughness of scarred skin beneath the thin coat. Whoever Daniel was, he hadn't been lying. This horse had been pushed too hard, too long, and it showed in every bone and breath. She opened the stall door slowly, watching Hunter's reaction. When he didn't bolt or shy away, she stepped inside. Her boots pressed softly into the straw. Hunter tensed, but didn't move away. She loosened the last strap of his saddle and slid it off carefully, setting it on a low bench beside the stall. "Let's get you cleaned up," she murmured. The hose water was cool, and steam rose where it hit his sun-warmed coat. Dust and dried sweat washed away in murky rivulets. Hunter stood still for most of it, except when the nozzle touched the scars near his neck. Then he flinched sharply, eyes widening. Claire immediately pulled back, whispering apologies he couldn't understand but maybe could feel. The dim barn lights hummed above them. Somewhere outside, a dog barked in the distance. The earthy smell of wet hay filled the air, mixing with the sharp scent of metal tools hanging on the wall. It reminded Claire of evenings helping her father after long days of harvest, quiet moments where the world felt manageable, even if the struggles weren't. She grabbed a towel and brushed away the water, noticing how Hunter leaned slightly toward her touch, even while trying not to show it. "You and me both, huh?" she said softly, trying to hold it together. When she finally stepped out of the stall, Hunter followed until the rope stopped him. Claire closed the gate gently, giving him a reassuring nod. Inside her pocket, the folded note pressed against her leg like a weight she couldn't ignore. She walked to the farmhouse, boots crunching on gravel, the air thickening with the approaching storm. The kitchen lights glowed warm through the windows, casting a fuzzy rectangle onto the porch. The house felt emptier than usual tonight. She brewed coffee she didn't need and sat at the wooden table her father once refinished by hand. She spread the note out flat, reading it again and again. Who was Daniel? What happened at Lawson's ranch? Why did he write this like he was expecting something bad to happen? Claire's jaw tightened. She knew one thing for certain. If Lawson was missing a horse, he wouldn't let it go quietly. And if Daniel had really tried to take Hunter, he might already be in trouble. Lightning flashed faintly outside the window, illuminating the wheat fields in brief, ghostly bursts. Not supernatural, just Kansas. Storms came fast here. Trouble did too. Claire leaned back, exhaling slowly. She had inherited this land, but she had also inherited something else. Her father's refusal to look away when something wasn't right. And this, whatever Hunter had been through, wasn't right. She looked toward the dark shape of the barn outside. "Don't worry," she whispered to herself more than to him. "I'm not sending you back." She folded the note one last time, tucking it into the drawer beside her father's old pocket knife. Tomorrow she would drive into town, ask a few careful questions, find out who Daniel was, because the horse wasn't the only one carrying a story. And Claire wasn't about to let the wrong people rewrite it. The storm rolled in during the night, not with fury, but with a slow, persistent weight that soaked the ground and painted the horizon a dull, muted grey. By morning, the fields around Claire's farmhouse glistened with patches of standing water, the soil soft underfoot, the humid air smelling of wet earth and summer heat. Thunder still murmured faintly to the south, like an unfinished sentence. Hunter stood in his stall, calmer than the night before but watchful as always. His ears twitched when Claire approached with a bucket of grain. When she set it down, he dipped his head and ate eagerly, though his ribs still showed in ways that made her throat tighten. "You're going to be okay," she said softly. "We'll get some weight on you." He paused mid-chew, lifting his head to look at her, not scared, not demanding, just present. A horse that had learned to read people because he had needed to. Claire checked the latch twice before stepping out and wiping her hands on her jeans. She grabbed her father's old canvas jacket from the nail by the door, too warm for it, but storms made her uneasy, and headed toward her truck. Today she would drive into town, ask questions quietly, find traces of this mysterious Daniel, and pray none of it got back to Lawson. The drive to Hutchinson took 40 minutes along long, flat stretches of road lined with wheat fields and aging farmhouses. The sky hung low, heavy with leftover rain. Every so often Claire's thoughts circled back to the note in her pocket yesterday, The pressure marks on Hunter's neck, the way he had nudged her toward the saddle like he knew exactly what she needed to find. Not supernatural, just strange. Strange in the way trauma shapes instinct. When she reached town, the streets were damp and quiet. The morning crowd moved slowly, farmers grabbing breakfast at the diner, shop owners sweeping rainwater from their doorways, teenagers dragging themselves towards summer jobs they probably hated. Claire parked in front of the small brick building of the Feed and Supply Co., a place where gossip flowed faster than grain. If Daniel worked anywhere nearby, someone here would know. The bell above the door jingled as she stepped inside. The store smelled of leather, dust, and molasses from bags of sweet feed stacked along the aisles. Behind the counter stood Martha Halper, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a memory as long as Kansas Highway 61. "Well, morning, Claire," Martha said, adjusting her glasses. "Haven't seen you in a bit." "Morning," Claire replied, offering a polite but distracted smile. Martha eyed the jacket, the mud on Claire's boots. "Storm keep you up?" "A little." Claire hesitated. "Actually, I came to ask you about something. Someone." "Oh?" Martha leaned against the counter, clearly ready for whatever story was about to unfold. "Who you looking for? Do you know anyone by the name of Daniel? Maybe works with horses. Young or middle-aged, I'm not sure." Martha frowned thoughtfully. "Daniel? Daniel who?" "That's all I have. Just Daniel." Martha clicked her tongue, thinking, "Well, we've got a Daniel Price who drives trucks for the co-op, but he's scared of horses. A Daniel Everett, but he moved to Wichita last year. And Daniel, wait!" She snapped her fingers. "Are you talking about that boy who used to help out at Lawson's ranch?" Claire's breath caught. "Possibly. What do you know about him?" Martha lowered her voice, suddenly cautious. "Not much. He was a quiet kid, good with animals. Too soft-hearted to be working for someone like Mitch Lawson, if you ask me. He only lasted a few months before disappearing." "Disappearing," Claire repeated. Martha nodded. "Quit out of nowhere, didn't collect his last paycheck. Some folks said he left town, others said Lawson ran him off, but..." She hesitated. "There were rumors." "What kind of rumors?" Claire pressed. "That the kid saw something he shouldn't have about how Mitch treats his horses." Martha's eyes sharpened. "Why are you asking about him, Claire?" For a moment, Claire considered lying, but Martha wasn't someone easily fooled, and this wasn't a situation to navigate alone. "I bought a horse at the auction yesterday," Claire began carefully. "Or I thought I did. There was a mix-up." Martha's eyebrows rose. "A mix-up with Lawson's horses is never just a mix-up." Claire swallowed. "I found a note hidden in the saddle, signed by Daniel." Martha's face tightened, concern blooming across her features. "Oh, Claire, that's not something you want tangled in." "I didn't ask for it," Claire said plainly. "But the horse, Hunter, he was in bad shape. Someone hurt him, Martha." Martha looked around the store, then leaned in. "Listen to me. If Lawson finds out that horse ended up with you, he'll come looking. He doesn't like losing animals, especially ones that have been trained the way he trains them." "What does that mean?" Claire asked, though part of her already knew. Martha didn't sugarcoat. "It means he breaks them fast and hard, pushes them past exhaustion. Some don't make it. And the ones that do..." She shook her head. "They aren't the same." The knot in Claire's stomach tightened. "I'm not giving Hunter back," she said. "I didn't think you would." Martha exhaled slowly. "But you need to be careful. Mitch Lawson isn't above intimidation." Claire glanced through the store window at the truck outside, imagining Lawson showing up at her property, demanding the horse he mistreated. The thought made her fists clench. "Do you know where Daniel might have gone?" she asked. Martha hesitated again. "There's one place people talked about. His aunt had a small place out near Yoda. Quiet, out of the way. He might have gone there after leaving Lawson's." "Do you have an address?" "Only general directions. That area's mostly farmland, dirt roads and long stretches between houses. But I can draw you something." She grabbed a scrap of paper and sketched a rough map, marking a turnoff near a narrow county road. Claire folded it carefully and tucked it into her pocket. Before she left, Martha placed a hand on her arm. "Be careful, Claire. And don't go out there alone if you can help it." Claire nodded, though she didn't promise anything. Outside, the rain had begun again, soft, steady, relentless. She climbed into her truck and sat for a moment, staring at the blurry reflection of her own face in the wet windshield. Hunter had been through hell. Daniel had risked everything to get him out. And Lawson. Lawson wouldn't just forget. Claire started the engine. Whatever waited on that dirt road near Yoda, she had to find it. Because Hunter's story wasn't just a warning, it was a beginning. And Claire wasn't turning back now. The rain didn't let up for the next hour. It pattered steadily against the windshield as Claire drove south along the empty county road, the truck's wipers beating a slow, uncertain rhythm. Kansas storms weren't always loud. Sometimes they were quiet and persistent, the kind that soaked through your clothes before you realized you were standing in them. The farther she drove, the more the landscape opened into wide, rolling fields, broken only by the occasional windmill or weathered farmhouse, leaning under the sky like it had grown tired of standing. Telephone poles lined the road in long, straight intervals, disappearing into the grey horizon. Martha's hand-drawn map lay on the seat beside her, the pencil markings already smudged from damp fingers. Turn left past the old grain elevator, follow the dirt road until the asphalt ends, then watch for the white gate leaning to one side. That's all she'd been given. Claire exhaled slowly and tightened her grip on the steering wheel. The road narrowed, turning rough beneath the tires. Mud splashed up the sides of the truck as she eased off the gas. Storm runoff carved small rivulets into the dirt, forcing her to navigate carefully to avoid getting stuck. Her father had always warned her about venturing down unfamiliar roads after rain. But turning back wasn't an option, not when Hunter had come to her in the condition he was in, not when someone had left a note begging for help. She passed the grain elevator, its metal siding rusted and streaked with rain. The wind whistled through its empty openings. She made the left turn. The mud deepened. Trees crowded close to the road now, thin trunks dripping with rainwater, their leaves trembling with the weight of the storm. Between them, she could see stretches of open field where tall grass bent under the wet wind. Finally, the road widened slightly, and there it was. A crooked white gate leaning like it had been ready to fall for years. "This is it," Claire murmured. She parked the truck on the side of the road, boots sinking into the soft ground the moment she stepped out. The rain had softened to a mist, hanging thick in the air. The fields beyond the gate stretched far, broken by a single narrow path leading toward a house barely visible through the trees. The property looked forgotten, but not abandoned. Someone maintained the fence, even if only barely. Someone had cut the grass at some point. The path was muddy, but footprints were visible, fresh ones. Claire followed them, each step squished softly under her boots, the sound muffled by the fog. She kept her hands in her jacket pockets, more out of nerves than cold. As she approached the small farmhouse, more details came into view. The porch steps were cracked but swept clean. A blue enamel mug sat on the railing, half filled with rainwater. Curtains hung in the windows, thin, faded ones that fluttered slightly with drafts. Someone definitely lived here. She hesitated at the bottom of the porch. A screen door creaked softly in the wind. Before she could knock, the main door opened just an inch, then two, then fully. A woman in her late 60s stood in the doorway. Her grey hair was pulled back into a low braid, and her face carried deep creases that spoke of years spent working the land. She wore a plaid shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and a pair of boots that had seen more miles than most trucks. She looked at Claire with cautious eyes, curiosity mixed with something harder. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice steady but cautious. Claire cleared her throat. I'm looking for someone. I was told he might have come here. His name is Daniel." At the name, the woman's expression changed almost imperceptibly. Not surprise, recognition, but not relief either. "I'm Claire," she added quickly. "I live north of Hutchinson." The woman didn't invite her in. Instead, she stepped onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind her. The screen door groaned as it settled into place. "What do you want with Daniel?" she asked. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Claire said. "I just need to talk to him. About a horse." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Which horse?" Claire hesitated. "Hunter." The woman exhaled sharply, almost like a tired laugh, but not quite. More like someone who had been expecting this moment, dreading it, and bracing for it all at once. "So he made it," she murmured. "Daniel wrote a note," Claire said softly. "He hid it in Hunter's saddle. It said not to send him back to Lawson's ranch." At the sound of Lawson, the woman's jaw tightened. She looked out toward the fields as if weighing what to say next. Finally, she spoke. "Come with me." Claire followed her around the side of the house, down a narrow dirt path that led to a storage shed half hidden by a large oak tree. Inside, the air smelled of machine oil, hay, and damp wood. Tools hung neatly on the wall. A single cot sat in the corner, blankets folded. "Daniel sleeps here sometimes," the woman said, "but he hasn't been back in several days. Do you know where he went?" Claire asked. The woman didn't answer right away. Her fingers traced the edge of the cot, as if the fabric held a memory. "Daniel is my nephew," she finally said. "He came here 3 months ago after leaving Lawson's place. Showed up with nothing but a backpack and bruises he wouldn't explain." Her voice tightened. "I asked him what happened. He didn't tell me. But he never lied about animals. If he said that horse needed saving, then he was right." Claire felt a heaviness settle in her chest. "Do you think Lawson went after him?" she asked. The woman met her gaze. "Mitch Lawson doesn't like losing, and he doesn't forget disobedience." A long moment passed between them. Then Claire asked the question she'd been avoiding. "Was Hunter abused?" The woman's expression softened with sadness. "Honey, that horse went through more than most people could bear." Lightning flashed somewhere far behind the fields, silent at this distance. "Daniel left a few days ago," the woman continued. "Said he needed to make things right. Said someone else was in danger." Claire stepped closer. "Who?" "He didn't say." The woman hesitated. "But he left a note. For whoever might come looking." She walked to a metal workbench, opened the top drawer, and retrieved a folded piece of paper. Claire's heart thudded as the woman handed it to her. The handwriting was the same. "If anyone finds this, I'm going back to Lawson's. Not to stay, never again. I just need proof, enough to stop him. If the horse made it out, keep him safe. Please, don't let Lawson take him back." Below, in smaller, shakier writing, "If I don't come back, tell someone." Claire's throat tightened. The woman placed a hand on her shoulder. "Listen, you seem like a good person, but if you get involved in this, understand something. Lawson plays rough, always has. I'm not letting him take Hunter," Claire said quietly. The woman nodded once, as if she expected that answer. "Then be ready, because if Lawson figures out where that horse ended up—" She paused. "He'll come looking." Thunder rumbled again, closer this time. Claire folded the note and slipped it into her jacket. She looked out at the rain-soaked fields, her jaw set, her pulse pounding. Daniel was out there, somewhere, walking straight into the place that had destroyed Hunter, and Claire knew she couldn't just wait. Not now, not after this. The rain had slowed by the time Claire pulled back onto the county road, but the sky still hung low and heavy, as if the storm refused to leave completely. Water streaked the truck's windows, blurring the fenced fields and barns she passed. Every mile between Yoda and her farm seemed to stretch, weighed down by what she had just learned. Daniel was heading back to Lawson's ranch, not to work, not to face old fears, but to find proof strong enough to stop a man who didn't think he could be stopped. Claire replayed the woman's words in her mind again and again. "If Lawson finds out where that horse ended up, he'll come looking." She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Hunter had already been through hell. She wasn't going to let the man who put him there take him back. As she turned onto the long gravel drive leading home, the first thing she saw was the barn, steady, still, waiting. The old structure had weathered decades of storms, fires, and Kansas winds, and stood with the kind of stubborn resilience her father used to admire. Inside the barn, Hunter lifted his head the moment she stepped in. His ears flicked forward, curious but wary. Rainwater from Claire's jacket dripped onto the dirt floor, forming small, dark spots. "Hey, boy," she said softly. "I didn't mean to leave you so long." He took a cautious step toward the stall gate. There was still that nervous tremor in his body, barely noticeable unless you looked closely. Claire reached out and brushed his cheek, feeling the damp warmth of his coat. "You did good yesterday," she whispered. "You got that note to me. I promise I'm going to do right by you." Hunter blinked slowly, and she noticed how he leaned just slightly into her touch. Not trust yet, but something moving toward it. She fed him fresh hay, checked the water bucket, and ran her hand along his side to inspect the marks again. The scars from the rope were clearer in the softer light of morning. They weren't old. They were the kind that came from prolonged pressure, someone tying a horse too tightly too often. It ignited a slow burn in her chest. When she finally stepped back out into the open air, she found herself staring toward the far end of her property where the wheat fields met the road. She imagined Lawson's truck appearing there, rolling down her drive, demanding Hunter back. Her stomach twisted. She couldn't let that happen. But she also couldn't ignore Daniel. The boy had gone back into a place he once ran from, and he might be walking into danger alone. Claire wiped her hands on her jeans and headed toward the farmhouse. The porch boards creaked under her boots. Inside, the house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of a wall clock. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where her father drank his morning coffee every day before sunrise. His old pocket knife lay in the drawer where she had placed it last night, beside Daniel's first note. She opened the drawer and placed the second note next to it. The two messages felt like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't yet understood. Don't send him back. I'm going to get proof. Someone else is in danger. Claire rubbed her forehead. She needed a plan. She unfolded a county map from the drawer, smoothing its creases across the tabletop. Lawson's ranch wasn't labeled. It wasn't the kind of place anyone advertised, but everyone in Reno County knew roughly where it sat, south of the river, near a cluster of old feedlots. She traced the dirt roads leading there, recognizing some of the landmarks from her father's old stories. The ranch had once been respected. That was before Mitch Lawson inherited it, before the rumors, before the auction horses started showing up skittish, thin, or worse. A gust of wind hit the house, rattling a loose gutter. Claire glanced toward the window. Clouds darker than the morning storm gathered again on the horizon, heavy and swollen with rain. She took a deep breath. She couldn't go to Lawson's ranch unprepared. She couldn't leave Hunter alone. And she couldn't ignore Daniel. She needed to think like her father would have. Careful, deliberate, anchored in common sense. She grabbed her phone, hesitated, then dialed a number she hadn't used in a long time. "Claire?" a voice answered on the second ring. "Everything all right?" It was Tom Davis, her father's old friend. He lived 2 farms over, a quiet man who had helped mend her fences more times than she could count. Someone she trusted, someone who knew Lawson's reputation better than most. "Tom," she said, steadying her voice, "I need a favor." "What's going on?" "It's about a horse I bought at the auction," she said, "and Mitch Lawson." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What about him?" "Can you come by later?" Claire asked. "I need someone here if anything happens." Tom didn't ask for details. "I'll be there in an hour," he replied. She hung up, exhaling slowly. Having someone else around wouldn't solve everything, but it was a start. She looked out toward the barn again. Hunter stood near the gate, watching her through the open doors as if listening to the world beyond the walls. His coat was still damp, his frame still thin, but there was something steadier in the way he held his head now. "Hang in there, boy," Claire whispered. The wind picked up again, pushing dark clouds across the sky. The approaching storm pressed against the land with a swollen, restless intensity. Thunder rumbled, and in that low, rolling sound, Claire felt something settle deep in her chest, a certainty heavy and undeniable. Lawson would come, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but he would, and when he did, she needed to be ready. For Hunter, for Daniel, for whatever truth Lawson had tried so hard to bury. Claire stood tall, her jaw tightening with quiet resolve. Storms didn't scare her. People who thought they could control everything, those were the ones she had learned to stand against. Tom arrived just after noon, his old Ford rumbling up the gravel drive with the familiar sputter Claire had heard her whole childhood. The sky above him churned with low, restless clouds, the kind that held more rain than thunder, heavy and swollen, like they were waiting for the right moment to break again. Tom stepped out of the truck, adjusting his hat as he scanned the property. His eyes were sharp even under the brim, calm, steady, the kind of gaze that had seen enough storms and trouble to know the difference between the two. "You look like you've been up all night," he said as he walked toward her. "I kind of have," Claire admitted. Tom didn't ask more, not yet. He followed her to the porch where she handed him both notes from Daniel. He read them slowly, jaw tightening slightly. When he finished, he folded the papers carefully and returned them to her. "Lawson," he muttered. "I hoped I'd never hear his name tied to more trouble." Claire leaned against the porch railing. "Tom, what do you know about him? About how he treats his horses?" Tom exhaled, long and low. "Enough to stay away. Enough to keep my livestock far from his, and enough to know that if a boy like Daniel risked everything to get a horse out, there's truth behind it." Claire nodded, staring out at the field shifting softly in the humid wind. "Do you think Daniel's safe?" she asked quietly. Tom shook his head. "Not if he went back to Lawson's alone." Those words landed with a weight that pressed into her chest. Claire told Tom everything, how she'd bought the wrong horse, how Hunter had pushed her toward the saddle pocket, how the note had led her to Daniel's aunt, how the boy had returned to Lawson's ranch for proof. He might be in real danger, Claire finished, and I can't just do nothing. Tom looked at her for a long moment, the way her father used to, steadiness mixed with unspoken concern. You're right, he finally said. You shouldn't do nothing, but you also shouldn't go charging into Lawson's place. He's been known to carry a temper and a shotgun. Claire stiffened. I'm not afraid of him. You should be, Tom said gently. Fear keeps us alive. Before Claire could respond, something caught Tom's eye. He walked off the porch, motioning for her to follow. They stepped toward the side of the house where the ground had turned soft from the earlier storms. Tom crouched down. Claire felt her heart skip. In the mud, deep and fresh, were tire tracks, not hers and not Tom's. They led from the road to a spot near the barn, then back out again. How long ago? Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom pressed his fingers into the wet soil beside the tracks. The edges were crisp, not softened by new rain. Couple hours at most, he said. Maybe less. Claire swallowed. She felt heat rise under her skin even as a cold ripple slid through her spine. Someone was here, she said. Tom stood, scanning the road, the fields, the tree line. Do you recognize the tread? You know your trucks. But Claire shook her head. The pattern was wide, aggressive, something used for off-road or farm work. Could be nearly anyone in rural Kansas, except she knew who made sense. Lawson. Her pulse beat in her throat. Tom, she whispered. What if he already knows Hunter is here? Tom didn't answer. He didn't need to. He walked toward the barn without another word, and Claire hurried after him. Inside, Hunter stood pressed near the back of the stall, ears pricked forward, body tense. Not panicked, just alert. Like he'd heard something earlier, like someone unfamiliar had been close. Tom checked every stall, every door latch, every window. Nothing broken, nothing forced. But Claire noticed something. The barn's side door latch, normally secured with an old iron hook, hung loose, the hook lying on the floor as if it had been brushed off or nudged open. Do you usually keep that latched? Tom asked. Always, Claire answered, her throat tight. They stood in silence for several seconds, the only sound the soft shifting of straw beneath Hunter's hooves. Tom rubbed his jaw. If Lawson came here, he finally said. He didn't stay long. Maybe he was just checking. Checking for what? Claire asked, even though she already knew. To see if the horse he lost ended up here. Hunter snorted suddenly, stomping once. Claire moved toward him, running a hand along his neck to calm him. He leaned into her touch, and she realized just how vulnerable he was, how vulnerable they both were. Tom stepped closer to the stall, lowering his voice. We need to take precautions, lock the gates, keep the barn secured, and Claire, you need to start carrying protection. I can handle myself, she said, though the quiver in her voice betrayed her. Tom's gaze softened. I know you can. But this isn't a stray coyote or a broken fence we're dealing with. This is a man who thinks he owns everything he touches. And if he believes Hunter belongs to him, he'll come back. The barn felt too small suddenly, too quiet. Claire looked at Hunter, then back at the open doorway, imagining a truck pulling up in the night, lights cutting through the dark, someone trying to take him. No one is taking him, she said firmly. Tom's expression was grim but approving. Good, then we plan. For the next hour they walked the property. They reinforced the barn latch, added a locking chain to the main doors, and secured the back gate with a heavy steel pin Tom fetched from his truck. Claire followed his instructions carefully, grateful for the steady presence beside her. But when they reached the far pasture fence, Tom stopped abruptly. Claire, he said, pointing downward. She stepped closer. Footprints, human, deep, clear, facing the barn. And beside them, another set, faint, older, washed partly away by rain. Tom knelt again. Someone walked this way during the storm. Claire felt her spine tighten. Could it be Daniel? She asked. Maybe, Tom said, though he didn't sound convinced. Or Lawson, Claire whispered. The breeze picked up, carrying the smell of wet grass and distant thunder. The storm had returned to its slow, circling dance above them. Tom stood. Either way, someone scouting your land. Claire's pulse hammered. Tom turned to her, voice low and firm. "Tonight, I'm staying here. No argument." She didn't argue. Nightfall would bring fewer answers, fewer options, and fewer witnesses. If Lawson returned after dark, if Daniel showed up hurt, if both happened, Claire shook the thought away. "Tom," she said quietly, "what do we do now?" He looked toward the darkening sky. "Now," he said, "we watch, and we wait." And as they headed back toward the house, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the real storm, the one that had been building since the moment she brought Hunter home, was finally closing in. Evening settled over the farm in slow layers, the kind of Kansas dusk that painted the fields in muted gold before slipping into deep blue. The air still held the thickness of the earlier storms, and the scent of wet earth mixed with the sweet trace of hay drifting from the barn. As the last light drained from the sky, cicadas began their steady chorus, their buzzing rising and falling like a restless heartbeat. Tom hauled his overnight bag from the truck and set it on the porch. "I'll take the living room couch," he said. "Easier to hear anything outside from there." "Thank you," Claire replied, her voice softer than usual. She hated the idea of needing help, but she hated the thought of facing Lawson alone even more. Inside, the house felt different with someone else moving through it. Tom checked the doors twice, turning each lock with a decisive click. Claire made a pot of coffee, even though neither of them needed the caffeine. They just needed something steady to hang on to. As the sky darkened fully, Tom stood at the window, arms crossed, watching the gravel drive like it might come alive at any second. "Do you think he'll come tonight?" Claire asked quietly. Tom didn't turn. Men like Lawson don't usually wait long when they think something's been stolen from them. Claire swallowed. "Hunter wasn't stolen." "I know," Tom said. "But Lawson's the kind of man who cares less about the truth and more about control." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the tick of the wall clock and the low hum of the refrigerator. After a while, Claire stepped onto the porch, mug in hand. The night air brushed against her skin, cooler now but still damp with leftover rain. Crickets chirped. A distant truck hummed along the county road and faded. She could almost pretend it was a normal night on the farm. Almost. "Claire," Tom called from inside, "let's check the barn before it gets any later." They walked side by side under the dim porch light, flashlights in hand. Gravel crunched softly beneath their boots. The barn loomed ahead, its shape a dark outline against the night sky, its wooden slats glowing faintly where the moonlight fought through the clouds. As they got closer, Hunter's silhouette appeared in the stall window, ears pricked forward like he'd been listening the whole time. Inside, Tom swept his flashlight slowly across the stalls. Dust floated through the beam like drifting ash. Nothing looked disturbed. Hunter blew out a breath when Claire approached, nudging her shoulder through the stall bars. She smiled despite the tension knotting her stomach. "You're all right," she whispered. "You're safe." But even as she said it, a part of her wondered if it was true. Tom walked the length of the barn again, checking locks, doors, and every window latch. "Looks good," he said, quiet. They stepped back outside, but Claire paused just before closing the barn doors. Something in the air felt wrong. She listened. At first, she heard only the night. Cicadas, wind rustling the tall grass, a faint moo from the neighbor's distant cattle. Then she heard it, a faint clicking sound. Metal on metal. Soft, deliberate. "Tom," she whispered, gripping his arm. He froze. The clicking came again, rhythmic, measured, not a natural sound. A gate latch? A chain? Or worse? The cock of a rifle? Tom held up a hand for silence. He turned slowly, scanning the tree line near the far pasture. The flashlight beam traced along the fence, over patchy grass, across the shadowed line of trees. Nothing. But the sound had come from there. Claire was sure of it. Tom motioned her back toward the barn. They slipped inside quietly. Tom killed the flashlight. Darkness wrapped around them. "Stay low," he whispered. Claire knelt by Hunter's stall. The horse sensed the tension immediately, his body tightening, ears swiveling sharply, breath coming quicker. Claire placed a calming hand on his neck. "Easy," she whispered. Outside, the clicking sound stopped. Silence dropped over the farm like a heavy curtain. Then, gravel shifted somewhere near the drive. Footsteps, or tires rolling slowly. Tom edged toward the barn door and peered through the narrow crack. After several long seconds, he whispered, "There's a truck. Headlights off." Claire's stomach dropped. "Whose is it?" she whispered. "Hard to tell in the dark," Tom said, "but it's stopping by your fence." Claire's pulse hammered in her ears. What if it was Lawson? What if he'd been watching earlier? What if he'd seen the tracks Tom had noticed? Tom positioned himself near the door, shoulders squared. "Stay with Hunter, don't move." Claire didn't argue. Every second stretched, thick and slow. She could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears, could feel Hunter trembling under her hand. Then another sound. A car door opened, closed quietly. Footsteps on gravel, moving toward the barn. Claire's breath caught. Tom held up a hand. Silent command. Footsteps approached, faint at first, then clearer, closer. Claire pressed her back against the stall, her pulse thundering. Hunter shifted, nostrils flaring. A shadow moved past the crack in the barn door. Someone paused directly outside. Tom's hand hovered near his belt, not for a gun but for the heavy metal flashlight he carried like a weapon. The barn door creaked, just slightly. Someone testing it. Claire held her breath. Hunter did too. Then the voice came, low, strained, breathless. "Claire, are you in there?" She froze. She knew that voice. Not Lawson, not Tom. A young voice. Trembling, hope and fear tangled in it. Tom's eyes widened. "Is that—" Claire rushed to the door and pulled it open just enough to see. A young man stood in the rain-soaked dark, drenched from head to toe. Mud streaked his jeans. His hands shook violently. His eyes darted behind him like he expected someone to jump out of the shadows. "Daniel," Claire whispered. He stumbled forward, as if relief alone was enough to collapse him. He knows," Daniel gasped. "Lawson knows Hunter's here." Claire grabbed his arm. "Daniel, what happened?" Daniel swallowed hard, breathing fast and uneven. "I tried to get the proof. I tried—" His voice cracked. "But he found out he's coming." Claire's blood went cold. "When?" Tom demanded. Daniel lifted his head, eyes wide with fear. "Tonight," he whispered. "He's coming tonight." And before Claire could respond, headlights in the distance blinked on, bright and sharp through the darkness, turning onto her road. Headlights cut through the darkness like two white blades, sweeping across the gravel road and flooding the trees with harsh light. Claire felt her breath lock in her chest. The beam grew brighter, closer, turning the wet gravel into glittering shards. Daniel stumbled backward until he hit the barn wall. His clothes were soaked, mud plastered up to his knees, and his face was pale with exhaustion and fear. Tom exchanged a look with Claire, one that carried 100 unspoken warnings. "He's early," Tom muttered. Claire swallowed hard. "What do we do?" Tom didn't answer immediately. He stepped outside the barn door, staying in the shadow of the frame, peering toward the road. The truck slowed near the fence line, engine rumbling low. Not a neighbor, not a random passerby. The vehicle idled, headlights fixed directly on the drive leading to Claire's house. Hunter stomped in his stall, restless, picking up on the tension like electricity in the air. Claire placed a calming hand on him, her own heart racing. Daniel shook uncontrollably. I didn't know he followed me," he whispered, voice cracking. "I thought I got away. I thought—" "Save your breath," Tom said gruffly but not unkindly. "You're safe for now." The truck rolled forward slowly, tires crunching wet gravel, heading straight toward the farmhouse and barn. Claire's jaw tightened. That wasn't curiosity, that wasn't coincidence. That was a man coming with purpose. Daniel stared at the approaching headlights, like someone staring down a nightmare he'd spent months trying to outrun. "It's him," he whispered, voice breaking. "It's Lawson." The truck came to a stop near the porch. The headlights shut off, plunging the yard into near darkness again. Only the weak glow of the moon lit the fields. A door opened. Footsteps. Deliberate, heavy. Then a voice. Deep, cold, unmistakable. "Claire." Tom's eyes narrowed. "Stay behind me," he murmured. Claire didn't move. Her entire body tensed, but she refused to hide. She stepped forward just enough to see through the darkness. A tall man in a dark jacket stood by the truck, hands at his sides. His posture was confident, too confident, like someone who believed no one would dare challenge him. His boots splashed in a shallow puddle as he stepped away from the truck. Claire, he repeated, his tone calm in a way that made her skin crawl. I know you're out here. Tom took one solid step forward. What do you want, Lawson? He called out. Lawson turned his head slightly, annoyed at the interruption. This is between me and her, Tom. Stay out of it. Not tonight, Tom replied. Claire felt Daniel edge closer behind her, trembling. His breath came sharp and fast. Lawson took another slow step forward. I'm missing a horse, he said, one that was taken without permission. Claire stepped forward before Tom could stop her. You mean the horse I bought at the auction? The one they delivered to me with the wrong tag? Lawson gave a humorless smile. You and I both know that's not how it happened. Claire held her ground. I have receipts. The auction paperwork. You have a skinny, untrained, half-broken animal that doesn't belong to you, Lawson said, his voice sharpening with impatience. I came to collect him. Hunter pawed the ground inside the barn, sensing the rising tension. The sound echoed through the wooden walls. Tom planted himself firmly between Lawson and the barn. You got a bill of sale for that horse? He asked. Lawson didn't flinch. I don't need one. Then you're trespassing, Tom said. Lawson's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked briefly toward the barn, then back to Claire. I'm trying to handle this civilly. Don't make it complicated. Daniel let out a strangled sound, desperate and angry all at once. You tortured him, he shouted. Lawson froze. Slowly he turned toward the darkness beside the barn, the place where Daniel stood half-hidden. Claire felt Daniel shrinking back, terrified. Lawson's face shifted from annoyance to recognition. Daniel, he growled, taking one step forward. I knew you'd run your mouth eventually. Tom raised a hand, stopping Lawson from advancing another inch. That's far enough. Lawson stared at Tom with cold fury. Rain dripped from his jacket, tapping quietly on the gravel. That boy stole from me, he said, pointing sharply. And he dragged this woman into it. Claire stepped forward, anger rising. Dragged? He was trying to save a horse you nearly destroyed. Lawson laughed, a short, ugly sound. You know nothing about training horses. I know abuse when I see it, Claire shot back. A muscle twitched in Lawson's jaw. Tom shifted subtly, spreading his stance, ready to intervene. You need to leave, Mitch, he said. Now. Lawson took a breath, forcing his expression into something cool and composed. Not calm, but controlled. I'll be back with the sheriff, he said, lifting his chin. And with paperwork. You can't hide stolen property. Claire felt heat flood her chest. Hunter isn't stolen. And Daniel isn't your property either. Lawson ignored her. He pointed at Daniel with a cold, deliberate finger. You're finished. You hear me? Daniel swallowed, his knees shaking. Lawson took one more step back toward his truck. If that horse isn't tied to your front gate by tomorrow morning, he said, I'll come back. And next time, I won't knock. Tom moved forward slightly. You didn't knock this time, he said quietly. Lawson narrowed his eyes but didn't respond. He turned, boots splashing, and climbed into his truck. The engine roared to life. He reversed slowly, headlights sweeping across the house, the barn, the field, almost like he was memorizing every inch of the land. Then he sped down the road, gravel spraying behind him. Silence settled instantly. Only Daniel's shaky breaths filled the air, and the distant rumble of thunder rolling over the plains. Tom exhaled. Well, he said, that went about as bad as expected. Claire felt her legs weaken, and she steadied herself against the barn door. Daniel slid down the wall until he was sitting on the ground, face buried in his hands. He's going to ruin everything, Daniel whispered. He'll take Hunter. No, Claire said firmly. He won't, Tom nodded. We're not letting that happen. Claire looked toward the road where Lawson's truck had disappeared. Tomorrow morning. That was the deadline. They had one night to protect Hunter, and to figure out a way to bring proof against Lawson before he returned with the sheriff, or worse. Claire took a deep breath. The storm wasn't coming. It was here. The moment Lawson's taillights vanished beyond the bend in the road, the night felt colder. Not in temperature, but in the way the air seemed to tighten around the edges of the farm, like the fields themselves understood the danger pressing in. Tom closed the barn door gently but firmly, sliding the reinforced bar into place. The metallic clank echoed in the quiet. Daniel remained on the ground, breathing hard, his hands trembling against his mud-streaked jeans. The porch light in the distance flickered faintly. casting long, nervous shadows across the gravel. Claire crouched beside him. "Hey, you're safe now." Daniel shook his head. "No, I'm not. And neither are you." Tom stepped closer. "Listen, kid, you made the right choice coming here. Lawson might bark loud, but he's not the law." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Where I grew up, people like him were the law." Claire exchanged a worried look with Tom. "Tell us what happened," she said softly. "Everything." Daniel swallowed, then nodded, still staring at the ground like he was afraid of what might come out once he started talking. "I went back to the ranch 3 days ago," he said. "I knew it was a bad idea, but I thought if I could get proof of what he's been doing, what he did to Hunter, someone might finally listen." "What kind of proof?" Claire asked. Daniel rubbed his face with muddy hands. "Photos, records. He keeps a logbook of the horses he trains. Their weights, behaviors, injuries. He writes everything. He thinks it makes him look organized. But it shows the truth, shows how fast he pushes them, how many he injures." Claire felt her jaw tighten. "Did you get it?" Daniel hesitated. Tom answered for him. If he had it, Lawson wouldn't be this rattled. Daniel nodded miserably. "I got close. The book was in his office. I had it in my hands, but he came back early. I barely got out before he saw me through the window." His voice cracked. "He chased me halfway across the property." "How'd you get away?" Tom asked. "Through the south fence," Daniel whispered. "The same one I used when I got Hunter out months ago. I didn't think he saw me, but he must have followed my tracks." Claire put a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You tried to do the right thing. That matters." Daniel looked up at her, eyes red. "It doesn't matter if he destroys Hunter, if he takes him back." "He won't," Claire said, voice stronger than she felt. Tom glanced toward the barn. "We need a plan. We've got until morning. Maybe less." Claire stood and brushed the dirt from her hands. "First, we make sure Hunter is safe." They checked the entire barn again. Every latch, every window, every bolt. Tom tested the new locks he'd installed earlier. He even wedged a heavy feed bin in front of the back door as an extra barrier. Daniel moved slowly, limping slightly, and Claire finally noticed the swelling above his ankle. "You're hurt," she said. He shrugged. "Jumping fences, running for my life. I'm fine." "You're not," Claire insisted. "Sit down." She guided him to a wooden stool near the tack room and examined his ankle. It was tender, puffed and bruised. Nothing broken, but he'd pushed it too hard for too long. Tom handed her a roll of wrap from a toolbox. "Here." Claire wrapped Daniel's ankle carefully, the way her dad taught her years ago when she'd twisted her own playing in the fields. Daniel didn't speak, but his eyes said enough. Fear, exhaustion, guilt. When she finished, she sat back on her heels. "You're staying inside tonight." Daniel shook his head. "I can't. If Lawson finds me—" "He won't," Tom interrupted. "Not tonight. But if you try to run again, you'll collapse before you reach the county road." Daniel stared at the barn floor, chest heaving. Claire stood. "Now we figure out what to do when he comes back." Tom leaned against a support beam. "We need evidence, something the sheriff can't ignore." "Daniel said the proof is in that logbook," Claire replied. "And Lawson said he's coming with the sheriff," Tom added. "If we're empty-handed when they show up, his version wins." Claire's stomach twisted. "So we need the book before morning." Daniel's head snapped up. No, you can't go there. Claire, you don't know that ranch like I do. There are dogs, cameras. He stays up half the night. It's too dangerous." Tom crossed his arms. "He's right. It's a bad idea." Claire looked between them. "So we just wait for Lawson to show up and take Hunter back? Let him keep doing this to other horses?" Neither of them answered. Rain began again, soft at first, then steadier, striking the tin roof like a warning. Hunter shifted in his stall, snorting uneasily. Claire walked to him and rested her forehead gently against his neck. His coat was warm, his breathing quick, but steady. "He deserves better," she whispered. Tom and Daniel watched, silent. After a moment, Claire turned back to them. "I'm not letting Lawson win," she said. "Not with intimidation, not with lies, not with threats." Tom sighed, rubbing his temples. "What exactly are you thinking?" "A plan," she said. "A real one." Tom didn't stop her. He knew that tone. He'd heard it in her father before. It wasn't recklessness. It was resolve. Claire paced slowly, her mind racing through possibilities. "Daniel," she said, turning toward him, "you said Lawson keeps the logbook in his office?" Daniel nodded. "Top drawer. He locks it usually, but he forgot once. That's how I found it." "Does he stay in the office all night?" she asked. "No. He sits on the porch until late or watches TV in the living room. He thinks nobody would dare step foot inside." Claire absorbed every detail. "What about the dogs?" "Two," Daniel said, "but they're kept near the back kennels at night unless he's expecting trouble." Tom raised an eyebrow. "And tonight?" Daniel swallowed. "He might unleash them." The room fell quiet. Tom tapped his fingers on the beam behind him. "If someone goes, they need a distraction." Claire nodded. "Tom and I could go together?" Tom shook his head instantly. "No, one person goes, the other stays with the horse in case Lawson comes early." Daniel sat straighter. "I should do it. I know the layout. I know the dogs." Claire stepped forward, voice firm. "You can barely stand. You're not going." "Then neither should you," Daniel insisted. Tom sighed heavily. "We've got one night to get proof, keep the kids safe, keep the horse safe, and avoid a fight with a man who thinks he owns the county. This is madness." "Maybe," Claire agreed, "but doing nothing is worse." Outside, lightning flashed silently, illuminating the fields in pale blue before fading again. Tom looked at her long and hard. "If you go," he said slowly, "you're not going alone." Claire nodded. "Then we go together, in and out, quiet, fast." Daniel's eyes widened. "Claire, Tom, I don't want anyone hurt because of me." Claire knelt beside him again, her voice steady. "You didn't cause this. Lawson did." Rain hammered the roof harder. A gust of wind rattled the barn's side wall. Tom checked his watch. "If we're doing this," he said, "we need to leave soon, before the rain gets worse." Claire looked once more at Hunter. His dark eyes followed her, steady, trusting despite everything. She took a deep breath. "Then let's go. Because by sunrise everything would change, one way or another." The rain softened to a mist by the time Claire and Tom reached the truck, but the sky remained a deep charcoal grey, thickening with the promise of another downpour. Everything around them, the trees, the gravel, the open fields, felt mute and heavy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Daniel stood under the barn's awning, limping slightly, his arms wrapped tightly around himself. Fear carved every line in his face, but so did determination. "Don't let him see you," he whispered. "Lawson, he's unpredictable when he's angry." Tom handed Daniel a flashlight and an emergency whistle. "Stay with Hunter. Don't open that barn door unless you hear my voice. Not Claire's, mine." Daniel nodded quickly. Claire stepped toward him. "We'll be back before dawn." Daniel's voice broke. "Please, don't get caught." "We won't," she said, though her chest tightened with doubt. Tom climbed into the truck. Claire followed, the door creaking softly in the quiet night. As they pulled out of the drive, she glanced back at the barn. In the dim light, Hunter's silhouette stood perfectly still in his stall, ears pointed toward them, as if he knew exactly what was happening. The road to Lawson's ranch felt longer at night. Rain slicked the pavement, turning the thin beams of the headlights into streaks across the wet asphalt. The wipers beat a steady rhythm, matching Claire's pulse. Tom kept his eyes forward. "If we're lucky," he said, "Lawson went to the sheriff first, might give us extra time. And if we aren't lucky?" Claire asked. Tom didn't answer. They turned off the highway onto a dirt road that cut through miles of open pasture. Claire recognized the place from her father's stories, the old Lawson ranch once known for strong workhorses and fair deals. Everything changed when Mitch inherited it. The wooden sign at the entrance was barely visible now, sagging under the weight of years and neglect. Tom slowed the truck until they rolled to a silent stop about 100 yards from the main house. "From here we walk," Tom said. Claire slipped out, boots sinking into soft mud. The air smelled of wet grass and old wood. In the distance, the ranch house glowed faintly, one window lit on the first floor. Tom crouched beside her, scanning the yard. "Dogs!" Daniel's warning echoed in her mind. "I don't see any," Claire whispered. Tom pointed to a row of kennels near a shed. The doors were shut, but the shadows inside shifted slightly. "Two of them are awake," he murmured. They moved quickly, staying close to the fence line, stepping only where the mud was quietest. The rain masked some of their movement, but every crunch of gravel felt too loud. They reached the side of a small equipment building. Tom motioned for Claire to stay low as he peered around the corner toward the house. "There," he said quietly. Lawson sat on the porch, a dark shape illuminated by the lamp above him. His posture was rigid. He wasn't relaxed, not the way a man looks when he's ending his night. He was waiting. For what? Claire didn't want to know. Her stomach tightened. "We can't go through the front," Tom said. "Office windows around the back. Follow me." They moved along the shadow of the barn, hearts pounding in sync with the storm's distant rumble. Mud sucked at their boots. Wind rattled loose tin panels overhead. Every sound felt magnified. They reached the back of the house. A narrow light glowed from the small office window, barely visible through the curtains. Claire's throat tightened. "That's it." Tom nodded. "Stay here. I'll check the porch again." He disappeared around the corner. Claire crouched near the window listening. The office was quiet. She heard nothing but the faint hum of an old computer and the distant whine of wind. Tom returned, breath steady. "Porch is clear. He's in the rocking chair. Looks tired." "Or pretending to be," Claire muttered. Tom didn't argue. He tested the office window. Unlocked. Claire blinked in surprise. "Why would he leave it?" "He thinks no one would dare break in," Tom said. He eased the window upward inch by inch. A cool draft spilled out, carrying the stale scent of old paper and dust. Claire climbed through first, landing silently on the wooden floor. Tom followed, closing the window behind them. The office was cramped. Wood-paneled walls, a metal filing cabinet, a cluttered desk with ledgers piled high. Every surface was littered with bills, auction receipts, horse feed invoices. Claire pointed. "The logbook, top drawer." Tom approached the desk and pulled the drawer open. Empty. Claire's heart dropped, but then she saw it, tucked beneath a stack of folders, too large to fit properly, a thick, worn ledger with a leather binding. Tom lifted it carefully, flipped through the pages. Claire leaned closer. There were dates, horse IDs, notes scribbled with cold precision, pushed to limit. Collapse. Rope burn. Won't hold steady. Refuse to work. Struck twice. Needs stronger discipline. Hunter. Unruly. Will break soon. Claire felt bile rise in her throat. This is exactly what we need." Tom closed the book firmly. "Let's go." But as he tucked the ledger under his arm, a board creaked in the hallway. Claire froze. Tom's jaw tightened. The floorboards creaked again, closer. Then Lawson's voice. "Whoever's in my house, you've got 3 seconds to show yourself." Claire's breath caught. "Run," Tom whispered. "Go out the window. Now." "What about you?" Claire whispered. "I'll distract him. Go, take the book." "No," Claire hissed. "I'm not leaving you." Tom grabbed her arm, eyes blazing with urgency. "Claire, move." The footsteps grew louder, slow, purposeful. Claire forced herself toward the window, lifting it silently. Rain blew in, cold against her face. Tom stepped back into the shadows. The office door began to open. Claire slipped through the window just as the door creaked fully open. "Who the hell?" Lawson's voice roared. Claire dropped into the wet grass, mud splashing her clothes. She ducked behind a trough, clutching the logbook tightly. Inside the house, she heard scuffling, a thump. Tom's voice, Lawson's angry shout, then a gunshot. Claire's blood ran cold. She slapped a hand over her mouth, heart slamming against her ribs. Tom. She peeked around the trough just long enough to see the porch, Lawson storming out, cursing, scanning the darkness. A figure stumbled behind him. Tom, holding his shoulder, blood soaking through his sleeve. No time. Claire sprinted. Through mud, through rain, through the open field. She didn't look back. Lawson shouted her name, fury tearing through the night. But she didn't stop. She ran until her lungs burned and the barn lights came into view, small, golden, desperate beacons in the black. Daniel flung the barn door open. "Claire, go!" she yelled. "Help Tom, he's hurt." Daniel ran out into the night. Claire stumbled inside, shoving the barn door shut and sliding the heavy bar into place. Hunter pressed against the stall, panic in his eyes. "It's okay," Claire gasped. "I've got it. I've got proof." Her hands shook as she held up the ledger. Outside, shouting grew louder, closer, boots pounding on gravel. Tom's voice shouted something she couldn't make out. Then, Sirens, distant at first, growing, approaching fast. Claire sagged against Hunter's stall, clutching the ledger to her chest. The sheriff. Daniel must have called. Or a neighbor heard the gunshot. Or maybe luck finally shifted. The red and blue lights cut through the dark as patrol cars shot down the road, tires hissing on the wet gravel. Lawson's shouting stopped. Doors slammed. Officers yelled commands. Hunter breathed softly behind her, calmer now, as if sensing the shift. Minutes later, Tom limped into the barn, Daniel supporting him. Tom's shirt was bloody, but he was upright, breathing, alive. "You all right?" he asked hoarsely. Claire nodded, tears burning the edges of her eyes. "I got it. I got everything." Tom let out a shaky laugh. "Then it's over." Daniel hugged Hunter's neck, burying his face in the horse's mane. Outside, the sheriff shouted Lawson's rights as handcuffs clicked into place. And just like that, the storm finally broke. Did you enjoy this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know which moment grabbed you the most. Give this video a like to help it reach more people. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next story.